What up, folks? I'm Alex Pop, here with my currently untitled channel dedicated to all things Land Before Time. If you're just joining us, I've recently launched this channel to bring fans of the Land Before Time series together as we gear up for Journey of the Brave, the 14th installment coming out this winter. So I'm hoping that the title of this video will spark a lot of interest from fans out there. Now, before we begin, I want to get to the subscriber shoutouts. So, to those of you who've subscribed since my last video, here are your numbers. We left at number 13 last week, so Catman, you are number 14. Max Pank, you are number 15. Mr. Chomper 4, you're number 16. Ryan Davies, you are number 17. Noah Nibblink, you are number 18. Gareth Hawks, you're number 19. Poker Ox 27, you are number 20. Jalissa 44, you're number 21. Eddie Farrell Rocks, you're number 22. Horse Crazy Lover, you're number 23. Shiranui Saint, you're number 24. And last but not least, Lord Vader, you're number 25. Well, it's quite an honor to know that I'm earning the viewership of Lord Vader. Alright. So, thank you all for joining. I'm very glad to have you here. So in this video, I'll be answering a question that some of you have been asking me ever since my very first video from back in April, and that is, where do the Land Before Time movies rank among each other in my opinion? So today, I'm counting down my picks for the top 10 Land Before Time installments. That's right, I beat you to it, Watch Mojo. So in this channel's first top 10 list, I'll be ranking my favorites of the 13 movies from number 10 to number 1, and then I'll go over the 3 that got knocked off and why. I'll be giving a brief summary of each film so that later, before Journey of the Brave is released, I can do full reviews on each one individually. Now, I could just go on and on about how much each film means to me and how each of them made my childhood. I could sugarcoat it, but I'm not going to do that. Because I've garnered a more critical eye since I was a kid, and I'm able to hold these movies to more the same standards as other movies. Don't get me wrong, nostalgia still does play a big part, but I'm still going to acknowledge flaws when flaws are present. So, without further ado, here are my top 10 Land Before Time movies. Kicking off the list at number 10 is The Land Before Time 8, The Big Freeze. This one is lowest on the list because it's mostly a hit and miss for me. The flaw I take issue with the most is that I felt Ducky's character was exaggerated. I know that she's the slowest to anger out of the gang, but really she can barely comprehend the fact that she's angry, and she doesn't even know how to express it. Also, I thought the subplot involving Mr. Thicknose wasn't really needed. Still, the main conflict between Ducky and Spike is handled effectively. The animation quality is still very good, if not as fluid as the previous movies, and it has the usual warm character moments and messages like its predecessors, as well as Michael Tavera's score. So, again, big problems, but there's just enough to save it from omission from this list. Coming in at number 9 is The Land Before Time 10, The Great Longneck Migration. Now, I know that this one is definitely a fan favorite, and I even read some reviews from people who didn't like the other sequels but liked this one. And I can understand why. It's because it has a story that has more than a loose connection with the first movie. So you may be asking, why is it so low on the list? Well, I think it could have been great if it wasn't for 2 things that really brought it down for me. The first being a reoccurring problem with the last few movies in general, and that is an overabundance of CGI. And the second is a climax that makes not one lick of sense. It all but destroys the movie. But, with that said, I was engaged by the story. It was more emotionally involving than several other installments, and I remember what a pleasant surprise it was to see Littlefoot find his father alive. The heartwarming ending, along with the song Best of Friends, earns back the movie some of the points that it lost. So, all in all, I like it, but I just wish that the payoff of the general premise made more sense. On to number 8, and that is The Land Before Time 6, The Secret of Source Rock. Just about everything about this one is purely decent. The plot structure is pretty solid, despite dragging in some parts. The musical scenes and voice acting are great, and it does deliver an agreeable message about being responsible and recognizing the hero in your family. It doesn't resonate with me as strongly as some of the other ones, but overall, it's a worthy sixquel. Number 7, The Land Before Time 2, The Great Valley Adventure. As a direct follow-up, I can see why some fans of the first movie may have been underwhelmed by this first sequel, as it is considerably more lighthearted and less emotionally driven. However, if this was to come out when I was older, I think I still would have been as open to it. Because the characters are still continued well, and they have more development, and that's really what I did and still do love about these movies, seeing Littlefoot and his friends become more developed and to grow in each other. Also, the animation is surprisingly first-rate for a direct-to-video release. The replacement voice actors that they had to get were all good choices. Ozzy and Strut were a fun villain duo. There are some ridiculous plot conveniences, and I still don't get why the land outside the Great Valley is known by the residents as the Mysterious Beyond when it's where they all came from. So, not a masterpiece, but I can see myself watching it as often as the next few on the list. At number 6, and this is where they start to get really good, number 6 is The Land Before Time 9, Journey to Big Water. One of my subscribers, Pinchy08, said that this is his favorite of the series, primarily because of the character Mo, the Ophthalmosaurus. And yes, I love Mo too. He's a ton of fun. And I enjoyed the friendship between him and Littlefoot. But it does also have a somewhat mature theme about overcoming loneliness. While the message in the Great Valley Adventure was primarily, or rather exclusively, kid-oriented, the message here, well summed up in the theme song No One Has to Be Alone, is one that I think even some young adults can relate to. I know I did when I rewatched it. While the story takes a while to get going, it is well thought out and rounded off, and add to that one of my favorite endings of the series, and it's worth the number 6 slot on the countdown. Coming in at number 5 is The Land Before Time 3, The Time of the Great Giving. Like Journey to Big Water, this installment has a message that involves both kids and adults, which is always a plus in a family movie. While the dialogue with Littlefoot and the gang is very believable, the arguments between their parents are not believable in the slightest, and that's probably the biggest drawback to the movie. But it's made up for with beautiful animation and score, and sufficiently entertaining action scenes, like the fire escape and the fight with the velociraptors. So, all in all, I still enjoy The Time of the Great Giving quite a bit. And now, we come to the ones that still really resonate with me today. The 4 that are everything I love about The Land Before Time. And that starts with number 4, The Land Before Time 5, The Mysterious Island. Once you get past the ridicule of the convenient land path leading to the island, this is one of the most solid and earnest of the franchise. The characters are as lovable as ever, all of the songs are great, and while the animation's not as good as that of movies 1 through 4, it's still pretty darn good. And it was such a delight to see Chomper make a reappearance, and, of course, Littlefoot's solo during the song Always There is still enough to make a full-grown man cry. Believe me, I know. Coming in at number 3 is The Land Before Time 7, The Stone of Cold Fire. This is the most creative, thought-provoking, and self-aware out of the series. The villains are awesome, their bickering amongst each other is very funny, and I loved how Uncle Toronto's backstory tied in with the first movie. But what makes this movie really stand out is that the plot is remarkably complex for a movie of its type, delivering a brain-teasing twist at the end for kids and parents to discuss. Now, how many other kids' movies leave questions open for you to think about? I've never seen anything like that before, and that's why it earns a very high spot on the countdown. Number 2 is The Land Before Time 4, Journey Through the Mists. I have always loved this installment. In fact, it's probably the one that I watched the most as a kid. There's just something magical about it. It has a surprising amount of emotional heft involving the potential death of Littlefoot's grandpa, plus it explicitly evokes themes of diversity and the circle of life that made the original famous. As a kid, I enjoyed seeing Littlefoot and Allie together. I laughed my head off at the villains Dill and Icky. I sang along with all the songs, and I got chills when Littlefoot and his friends found the night flowers. And 15 years later, this movie still holds up the same. It has just the right amount of humor, tears, lightheartedness, and visual splendor combined into 75 minutes. And it deserves to be the runner-up on the countdown. And at number 1, you all knew what it was going to be before I even got started on the list. Number 1 is, of course, The Land Before Time 13, The Wisdom of Friends. This series gave us many good installments, but this one is by far the greatest of them all. It's the one that got us all into the franchise to begin with, and that's why it deserves the number 1 spot on this list. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's The Land Before Time 1 at number 1. And why shouldn't it be? This movie is director Don Bluth's masterpiece. And not only is it my favorite of the whole series, it has to be my favorite animated movie of all time. I wouldn't be half as much into the franchise if this movie hadn't been the start of it all. It is, in a word, epic. It was also one of the first things that brought the concept of death to me. The scene where Littlefoot's mother dies is so heart-wrenching that I can't watch it without getting tears in my eyes. With a great story and characters, glorious animation, and breathtaking music from the late James Horner, The Land Before Time will stay with me for the rest of my days. Congratulations, Don. You really got me. So, there you have it. My top 10 movies of the franchise. And now, I'll talk briefly about the 3 that didn't make the cut. Number 11 is The Land Before Time 12, The Great Day of the Flyers. I like it because it's serviceable to fans of Petrie, but there's not a lot more to it than that. The themes are generic, but heartfelt. The songs are okay, and Guido does provide good comic relief. But the Land Before Time franchise isn't just about moral uplift and childish fun, which this movie focuses the most on. It's more about emotional drive and deeper character moments, as we've seen from the ones that did make it onto the list. So overall, I think The Great Day of the Flyers is just okay. Down another notch to number 12 is The Land Before Time 11, Invasion of the Tiny Sauruses. I honestly didn't watch this movie as much as the others, and now that I've seen it with critical eyes, it's not very hard for me to see why. My biggest criticisms for this movie are for similar reasons as The Big Freeze. Although in that one, Ducky's character was exaggerated, here, Littlefoot's character almost seems reversed. He is once again concerned about his size, which he got over in the Great Valley Adventure. It seems to me that this is where the writer stopped caring about the character's maturity progressions. It does have a relevant It does have a relevant message to nowadays about valuing life. There are some funny moments and a fairly entertaining climactic fight with shark teeth, but as a Land Before Time movie, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. And at the bottom, at Unlucky 13, is, well, Unlucky 13. The Land Before Time 13, The Wisdom of Friends. Yeah, when even fans of this series say that it's bad, that should tell you something. It suffers from the Secret of Nim 2 syndrome of being too silly to be considered in the same universe as the original. The story is padded, the yellow bellies are annoying, the CGI is too much even for a late installment. There are numerous out-of-character scenes, and it focuses on the gang learning stuff that they've already mastered movies ago. It has its moments, but it's no wonder that this movie brought the franchise to a hiatus. It is by far the worst of the 13 so far, and I know a lot of you aren't disagreeing with me out there. But for those of you who did disagree, let me know what you thought of each movie in the comments below and how you would rank them. And if you want to make a video response featuring your own list, I would love to see that too. Here's a recap of my rankings. I can't wait to see where The Land Before Time 14 Journey of the Brave will rank among them when it comes out soon. Hopefully, it will fix the problems of The Wisdom of Friends. Finally, I want to make some clarifications about the contest I'm holding to give a title to this channel, as well as us as a community. If you have a name to submit, I will only count it if you send it to my email. If it's in the comments, anyone could see it and steal it. To make sure that doesn't happen, email it to alexander.pop@bellevuecollege.edu. And be sure to include your DVD preferences. You can find out more about that in the channel's intro video. Once again, you have until September 15th at 11:59 p.m. to send it in. That's all for now. This is the currently untitled Land Before Time channel, and I'm your host, Alex Pop. Catch you later.